What do you think is the underlying premise behind compulsory education laws? What is the assumption the lawmakers made when they wrote them and passed them, and when they continue to insist that they're essential and no one will even discuss repealing them? You know what it is? In its simplest terms, that parents left to their own devices will neglect their children. Or more to the point, are neglecting their children. And I say that because in order to pass a law saying parents en masse, anyone who has reproduced in America or has a child for whom they are responsible under the age of 18, is neglecting their education. Because what else could justify the state stepping in to take that over? I mean, we don't make laws on the basis of what might occur, do we? Certainly not that compel people to do something. We certainly have laws like speed limits and things like that that say, well, you can't drive faster than X because you might get in an accident. Okay, I guess you're hurtling down the street in a moving vehicle. If it hits somebody, it could hurt them. That's true. But simply reproducing and having a child doesn't seem to warrant the same degree of precog. You've had a baby, you might neglect it. Therefore, yeah, that's not what they're saying. They're saying we assume that you are. We assume that you are. We assume that you will. We assume it's not about you might. We're not going to compel millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, to essentially a 13-year sentence unless you've decided it has occurred. It is a given. It is a given. Parents neglect their children. Not some parents, all parents. Compulsory education laws don't just apply to those who've been adjudicated neglectful. They apply to everybody. Oh, you had a baby. And we know this because there's a birth certificate that you applied for. And you're taking a tax deduction, presumably, for having this child. So they have records. They know you had a baby. Good luck having them not know. And we know when you had it. So we know when it's going to turn the age that we, the state that you live in, have decided is, the age at which they should show up at a school, or you should let us know what else you're going to do. But we assume you are neglectful, and therefore we have all these rules and regulations in place to compel you to not just educate your child, to school your child. And what I mean by that is, because school is not synonymous with education, is in the way we see fit, the way we, the state, we, the government, define what education is. It occurs in a schooling environment. And even if you're going to do it at home, we'll define what that is. So many days of attendance, so many courses covered or topics covered or hours spent learning. And we're going to need you to pass a standardized test at the end of each year and have that either on file or actually submit it to us, or possibly something even more rigorous. We're going to need you to go get permission from your local principal to homeschool. Depends what state you're in. Oh, and P.S., mom and dad, one of you has to have a high school diploma or a college degree or this or that, jump through these 7 hoops before you can even do that. Because you know what? We've decided because you gave birth, you're neglectful. If you're still struggling with this, you're still thinking, wait, how are you saying they're decided that we are? Well, let's take a look at the 4th Amendment and the 5th Amendment, shall we? What does the 4th Amendment protect? Well, you cannot be searched or have your property seized or have anything taken from you. You can't be deprived of any of your stuff or any of that without probable cause. Okay. So what's the probable cause to pass a law that says you must turn your kids over to a school by the age of 6 or 7? And if you don't, there's going to be hell to pay. Your child is truant. We're going to possibly proceed with taking your child away from you if you don't get permission to do something different. I mean, it's basically the child belongs to us at the age of 6 or 7, and you need to answer to us about how you are educating them. how you're schooling them. And that presumes that there was probable cause for them to decide to take ownership of your kid and your parenting, right? Where was it? Did they show up at your door and say, "We have this evidence that you're neglectful"? Did they get some kind of report the second you gave birth or the second your child turned 6 or 7 that you were being neglectful? Do they even know if you have a job that you go to every day? Do they know what your life is like? Do they know how many relatives you have around? Do they know anything about you? You specifically, individual person. No, they don't. There's a sustaining law. You're a parent. This is the deal. Probable cause for neglect because you're a parent. You have a child. There it is. Okay. So bye-bye Fourth Amendment. They didn't even produce probable cause to sort of search your life and search your home or anything to decide that your child is being inadequately educated or would be. And they have precognition that they will be or are being. And so then we go to the Fifth Amendment. Now, don't you have due process? That even if they decided, we presume all parents are just so, I don't know what, hateful, lazy, unloving, neglectful, whatever, what do you want to, just a bad people, that they will completely disregard the need for their children to learn to read and write and do all the things or whatever. Okay. They would still, again, they'd have to start with the probable cause to even detain you or get you into a court. But then you'd have your day in court. You would have to. You would get your chance to answer for that accusation. And you would get to say, hang on a second, this is false. I am doing this, I'm doing that, or I planned to do this, I planned to do that. I'm actually going to send them to private school, or I'm going to homeschool them, or my neighbors and I are going to get together, whatever. We're going to do it in the evenings, the weekends, however we see fit. And don't you worry, my kid's going to get an education. I'm not going to let them walk around not knowing how to read, write, and, do basic math and what have you. And P.S., it's my kid. I'm going to decide what the things are that they need to learn, not you. Big brother, I'm going to decide. Where do you get off deciding what they need to know? Which will get me to the next amendment, but let's stick around with the Fifth for a moment. So you don't get that. You don't get any day in court, but sentence certainly has been handed down, hasn't it? 13 years. 13 years or an equivalency. And in most states, I suppose, with parents' permission, you can, but it's obviously also with the state's permission because they set what the year is and then the parents get to weigh in. If your child is 16 or 17, whatever, they can drop out, but they won't get that all important high school diploma that, is a rubber stamp of approval that the government says this kid is now educated according to the government standards, may not be educated at all. We're finding out. Plenty of kids going on to college can't read, can't do math. We're learning this every day. But, the government said it was fine, gave them a diploma. They graduated. They set all the standards. So bye-bye Fifth Amendment rights. That's your sentence. You've been adjudicated guilty. You never got into court. Your kids are now our property. And you tell us what's happening. You have to first report to us. You have to get our permission. You have to get our rubber stamp. Okay. Now, getting back to that other amendment that I said is being violated by virtue of the government deciding that, in addition to all of this other stuff, they will decide what your child hears and what your child may say in terms of that learning exercise, who they associate with, literally, physically in the room, in the building, where they're going to be all day. Does that strike you as a First Amendment violation? Bye-bye freedom of association. Bye-bye freedom of speech. Bye-bye freedom of thought, expression, all of it. Nope. You're going to show up. You're going to listen. You're going to do these things. You're going to say these things or not say these things. And we have custody of you for however many hours a day we decide. If we make the school day 9 hours, that's how long we have custody. If we make it 4 hours, that's how long we have custody. But it's up to them. It is not up to you, mom and dad. And God forbid you have too many absences. Now you have big problems. DSS will show up at your door. I don't want to hear your reasons. You were sick. The kid was sick. They were out of a bad day. They're nauseous. Too many absences. We, the government, have decided. So you see what I'm saying? All of this, every single rule and law amounts to multiple constitutional rights violations for every single parent and every single child in America. I don't know how you can see it any other way. No argument works with me. None of this, well, society should be educated. Does it then follow it should be done by the state? Even if you think that's true. Super. Well, guess what? We'd be a heck of a weird place to live if parents didn't feed their kids. Kids would certainly be neglected and have problems if they didn't get fed, wouldn't they? But we have laws in place for parents who don't feed their kids. And then there's evidence, probable cause they're not feeding their kids. And then you're going to say, but some parents, of course, some parents who do terrible things. People do terrible things. Guess what? They do it anyway. We have compulsory education. People still starve their kids and don't educate their kids. And, even with the kids going to school, they don't learn. So all the bad that you might be worried will happen, could happen, etc., if there aren't compulsory education laws, is happening with them. But that's while violating your rights. And on top of that, in order to violate your rights in these ways, where are they getting the money to pay for this prison? From you, of course. Yes, they're compelling that away from you. So now they're depriving you of your property without due process either. We're taking this property from you because we've already justified to ourselves, because we only need to convince ourselves, that you should be sentenced to 13 years of dropping your kid off at this place that we tell you to go to, or explaining to us what else you're going to do instead. So to me, the entire thing is just a massive, massive violation of your rights. And yet we're so accustomed to it, people don't stop and think about it that way. And then, of course, because the state is running the education, they make very sure you don't really ever think about it that way. You don't learn civics well enough. You don't learn philosophy, and the philosophy in particular of individual liberty, well enough to stop and think, wait, what am I doing every day and why? When did I get dragged into court and proven to be negligent enough that they could take custody of my children for 13 years, 8 hours a day, 9 months out of the year? And that my entire life is now orchestrated around the schedule they set for me because I reproduced. So when I tell you I'm an abolitionist, that's what I'm talking about. I don't believe that the government should violate our constitutional rights. Period. I don't believe you should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. I don't believe due process has occurred. I don't believe that you should be robbed to pay for this entire exercise. And I don't think any argument about how great it is to be educated, how much people need to read, how many parents might neglect their kids or do neglect their kids, whatever, is justification for these rights violations. None of it is. People will do dumb things. The same arguments can be made about guns. The same arguments can be made about speech that you don't like. Somebody might get hurt. Somebody might incite violence. Somebody might, could. Yes, certainly. Guess what? These things happen anyway. People get hurt. People don't learn. Parents neglect their kids. Now ask yourself, is it more or less likely that parents will neglect their kids or even have kids in the first place to neglect with compulsory education paid for by the collective or without? If individuals are responsible for their own children's upbringing and care all day, every day, if no parent could go to work because there wasn't free daycare provided by the government, and then compelled to hand over your kids to it, do you think that people might think twice about having kids that they aren't prepared for, can't, take care of, can't pay for, etc.? Do you think they might order their lives a little differently? I mean, you're assuming that it's a zero-sum game. I take away the school, and then, all hell breaks loose, or we're going to have the exact same amount of parents and the exact same amount of kids, and the people won't alter their behavior at all without the freebie. And it's not really a freebie. Everybody's paying for it, but the perception is, I got a place to send my kids from the age of X on. Someone else is going to take care of it. Someone else will be responsible. I can complain to somebody else if they can't read. It's somebody else's job to do the lion's share of raising my child. And then do you think there'd be more or less taxation and, in terms of property tax, whatever, with or without these schools? Do you think the population of children would guaranteed be ignorant? Because we've had compulsory education for quite a while now, with standards upon standards and tests upon tests, and they keep reforming it and reforming it and reforming it. And what's happening? We spend more money every year on it. Results. But that's not the reason not to have it, that it doesn't work. It doesn't work is the icing on the cake, in my opinion, the really toxic, poisonous icing on the cake, the sludge, because the whole thing was rotten from the get-go. And I don't think you get something good out of something wrong. So that is why I'm an abolitionist. And I will finish with this final point. Government school choice that comes in and says, all the problems you have, everything you don't like about this system, that it's ineffective, whatever you think you don't have a right to, we're going to give ourselves permission to take more of your money or just redistribute the money we've taken to private schools and private entities and homeschools so we get to have a say in how they work too. Don't you feel freer? So you see what I'm saying? Republicans and others who support school choice are not saying we're going to get your actual rights respected. We're going to make sure that your First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights are respected. And you will be free. We are going to repeal compulsory education laws. We are going to stop taxing your property. We are going to make it possible for you to literally choose your child's own education, how long a day it is, what days it happens, what subjects they're learning, and from whom. And you're free. Go, raise your own kids. That's not what they're saying. That would be parental rights. What they're saying is we've just given ourselves the authority to set up a new system where we can dole out the money differently so you can take it to different places and we can then monitor you there. You can meet your obligation to us. You can satisfy the law that is already unconstitutional to our liking in a bunch of different ways. And what have they done in so doing? They have enshrined public education. They have expanded government education. They have further entrenched this system that violates your rights, all while calling it freedom. So if you wonder why I'm so hostile to the idea, that is why. I hope that explains it. Thanks for watching.